Now, do you want to build the wealth and freedom of a seven-figure high performer? Or have you ever wondered, what separates the people who stay stuck in the same cycle year after year from the ones that actually build the wealth and freedom they desire? Now, many people believe it's from years of hard work. They just work longer and harder than everybody else. But in reality, seven-figure high performers often make more by working less. And I know you might be scratching your head like, what? How is that possible? How do they make more by working less? It has to be a scam. But look, I can tell you it's not a scam. It's not that they're more talented than you. It's not that they're luckier than you. It's just discipline. And in this episode, I'm going to let you in on the 7 secrets of a seven-figure high performer. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly what habits separate the wealthy from the average and how you can start applying them in your life today. Now, I've been studying discipline for over a decade now, and I just want to say I love every single bit of it because I realize once you master discipline, every area of your life improves. Your health, your wealth, your relationships, everything just gets better, right? And it's important because discipline just doesn't apply to one area of your life. For instance, let's say if you got in shape. You just don't get the result of having a nice physique, right? But that discipline that you learn can be applied to other areas of your life. It becomes a thing that connects everything together, right? And seven-figure high performers, they understand this. Now, typically when we hear the term high performer, right? What do we typically think about? Somebody that shows up early for work, someone that stays hour late, someone that works through their break. They're working longer and harder than everybody else. But I want to challenge that idea. That is not the life of a seven-figure high performer. Because what they do is they actually make more by working less. Because they understand that more work just doesn't equal more results. More work just equals more work. And eventually it turns into burnout. So instead of working 24/7, they golf, they spend time with their family, they spend time with their friends, they spend time with people they care about, they spend time buying back the time and the years that they wasted from ignorance, from the lack of awareness of what is possible, right? So they spend their time on things that they actually care about. And I just want to clarify something, it's not that they don't work. Let me be clear. It's not that they don't work, but they just work on the right things. They learn the right skills. They channel the energy into what matters most. They channel the energy into what's going to drive the biggest results and have the biggest impact, right? That's what's going to affect the most people, but also require the least amount of their time. This is what they do. So instead of working hard 24/7, instead of spending 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, they might work maybe 10 hours a week and make millions of dollars. And it might sound crazy, but it is possible. Now, I most recently joined Omar El Takori's Inner Circle, right? Now, this is a year-long coaching program that gives me direct access into the minds, the habits, the disciplines of 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure high performers. And after spending time in these rooms, right, one thing has become clear to me, like a person that loves to study discipline. One thing has become clear to me that there are certain patterns that they have, all of them, right? There are certain themes. And when you start to peel back the layers of personal preference, of individuality, of specific nuances and things that make them who they are, right? There are 7 disciplines that keep showing up every time. Now, these aren't optional, but these are foundational. I say these aren't optional because they all do it, right? And I believe that this is the thing, or these are the things that separate those who stay stuck from those who actually step into their wealth. Now, before we dive into these disciplines, let me be clear about something. These don't apply to every person that makes 7 figures. Because the truth is, there are some people who are just really good at making money, but the rest of their lives is a mess. The disciplines I'm going to be sharing with you today come from a different type of person, right? A special group of high performers. People who aren't just rich and wealthy in dollars, but they're rich and wealthy in purpose, right? They're leaders. They pursue excellence, not just financially, but in their health, in their wealth, in their relationships, in their faith, right? And that becomes the difference between someone who just is money rich and someone who is rich, right? Meaning rich in content, rich in character. When people talk about them, they talk about them with high regard, with respect, right? They have the respect of their community. People look up to them as a leader. So that's the type of high performer that we're talking about. We're talking about someone who is a purpose-driven leader and who has built a significant amount of wealth, but they just didn't sacrifice the rest of their life to do it, right? So the first discipline is time mastery. High performers value their time. They just look at time differently. See, most people, they spend time, but high performers, they invest their time. This is a very subtle but powerful difference. All of their time is filtered through their identity, not their to-do list, not the things that they have to get done or feel like they have to get done, but everything is filtered through their identity. They're constantly asking themselves, whether consciously or unconsciously, who am I becoming because of this? They constantly ask themselves the question like, does this align with my identity? Does this align with where I'm going? And if it doesn't, they just don't do it, right? I remember when I first started to become more and more disciplined, I realized I used to filter all my time through my tasks. I was always asking the question like, what do I need to get done today? What do I need to accomplish today? I'm writing this long list of to-dos. And as I'm going throughout the day, I'm checking, okay, boom, I got that done. Boom, I got that done. Boom, I got that done. And then by the end of the day, I ended up drained, right? I got all of these things done, but ended up drained at the end of the day and created no real meaningful impact. I had nothing to show for the things that I got done. They were honestly just meaningless tasks. However, once I started to shift my framing from tasks to identity, everything changed. It was almost like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I became more efficient with my time. I stopped spending my time on stupid things and things that didn't really carry a real impact, right? I started to do the things that I wanted to do versus spending time on things that I felt like I needed to do to feel accomplished, right? If you haven't read the book 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, I highly recommend you checking that book out because that book explains this time mastery concept perfectly because it taught me that not all time is created equal. Right? You got two types of time. You got Chronos, you got Kairos. Chronos is clock time. It's quantitative. Hours, minutes, seconds. It's the part of time that we actually measure. Right? Then you have Kairos. That is meaningful time. That's qualitative. It's the meaning, the significance. It's the right time, the opportune time. It's not about how much time we have, but it's about what that time actually means. See, most people live in Chronos, right? They're always checking the clock. They're always checking their watch, trying to figure out like, how much can I squeeze out of the day, right? How much can I squeeze out of this 24 hours? And then they measure themselves based off of how many tasks they done checked off their list, right? That's how I used to live. I would spend hours doing things, but creating no real value within inside those hours. Meanwhile, seven-figure high performer, they live in Kairos time. Instead of scattering their attention and energy across like 15, 20 different things, 20 little tasks, they take maybe 4 hours, 6 hours, 3 hours, and spend that on something that is meaningful that's going to drive real impact. Instead of spending it on a task that's over here and then a task that's totally separate, they'll take all their time, energy, and focus and spend it on that one thing. So they're spending all their time on maybe one or maybe even two tasks that are similarly related, right? They'll spend time reading, writing, sitting with a mentor. They'll take that single block of time and use it to their advantage because they understand that when they're putting their time, energy, and focus and everything into that single block of time, that can create a mindset shift that can save them decades. It can cause them to see an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have seen. And ultimately, like, they're saving years of just trial and error and like figuring it out. Something they understand is that the power isn't in the minutes, but it's more so in the meaning behind the minutes, right? Because when you assign the right meaning, you can go further faster. You can actually move faster through time. Ed Milet, he's a prime example of this concept, right? If you don't know who Ed Milet is, he's a 9-figure high performer in the business space. Now, he has this concept where he breaks his days into 6-hour blocks. So instead of one day being 24 hours to him, he splits his days. He has 4 days into one because every day is 6 hours, which is equal to one day to him, right? So it's not that he's changing time itself, right? Because the sun rises when the sun rises, the sun sets when the sun sets. He can't control that. He's not God, right? So he's not changing time itself. However, but he's changing the meaning of the time. He's changing the meaning within his 24 hours. And for him, it's squeezing 4 days into one. What he's doing is he's adding urgency, right? Which causes him to treat his time different, right? Because now, instead of looking at it as I have 24 hours to get this task done, or I have 24 hours to get all of these different things done, he's thinking to himself, I only got 6 hours to get this done. I don't know if you've heard of Parkinson's law, but Parkinson's law says that work will always expand to fill the time we have allotted for it, right? So that means if you give yourself 2 hours to finish a task, generally it's going to take you 2 hours to finish that task. If you give yourself unlimited amount of time to finish the task, generally you're not going to finish it, right? So he's using that principle and that law to his advantage. And what that does is that changes how he moves, right? He doesn't drift. He doesn't waste time. He doesn't get distracted because he's mastering the time that he has by creating the right meaning of the time. So that's the first one, time mastery. The second discipline of 7-figure high performers is continuous learning. Every high performer that I've ever studied has one thing in common. They never stop being a student. They carry the identity of a student, of a learner. They're always learning, always studying. And here's how life goes for the average person. And I fell into this same trap, by the way. And the average person goes through this. Most people, they'll graduate, they'll close the books, they'll shut off their brain, think their education is finished, right? And then, just like me, end up broke and lost. I mean, I did it after I graduated from college, I did not open a book. And even when I was in college, I only read the books that was required for me to read, right? Which really didn't create any real meaningful impact to my future and where I was going. I didn't open up my first book until I was 25, right? So for me, I fell into that same trap. After I graduated, I closed the books, I shut off my brain, and then I just started living what I thought was living life, right? And I ended up broke and I ended up lost. But actually picking up a book and reading and studying and becoming a student, that was the best decision I ever made. Because your mind is the greatest asset you'll ever own. It's just like a muscle. If you don't train it, then it's just going to get weak. So 7-figure high performers, they read books, they write books, they listen to podcasts, educational podcasts, they invest in courses and coaches and mentors, right? They do whatever they can to level up their mental. Because one perspective, one mindset shift, one insight can save you years and decades of wasted time and struggle, right? So they're constantly looking at themselves as a student, as a learner. They identify as that. And when I say identify in identity, identity is the thoughts you believe to be true or untrue about yourself. See, actions come from your beliefs because it's what we believe that drives our action, which then produces our result. So because they believe themselves to be a student and a learner, they do the actions of a student and a learner. And then they get the result of a student and a learner, right? Which then reinforces what they believed in the first place. So they carry the identity of a student. Okay? So that's number 2. They see themselves as a student and as a learner. The third discipline is they build businesses. 7-figure high performers understand that you can never create real freedom by trading time for money alone. Building a business is more than just money, though. They build businesses because it allows them to create within their unique abilities, their talents, their skills. So instead of being boxed into this job description, instead of being boxed into someone else's dream, they design the vehicle that's going to allow them to maximize who they can become and how many people they can serve. This allows them to create the freedom of who they were created to be. It allows them to live in the freedom of who they were created to be, right? They're able to create freely. They're able to serve a wide range of people within that creativity, right? Because when you're operating within your natural gifts and your natural talents, there is a level of freedom that, number one, money can't buy, and that can't even be explained into words, right? And they understand that building a business offers that freedom, but they just don't build any type of business. Like, I want you to catch that, right? They just don't build any type of business. They build a business that's in alignment with their unique abilities. Myron Golden has built an 8-figure business, coaching and consulting, using principles from the Bible. My coach, Omar El Takari, has built a 7-figure business, coaching on content. And I just want to say, when I say content, I'm not just talking about social media content, because he's much more than that, right? I don't want to lower him to that status, right? So when I'm talking about content, I'm not just talking about that type of content, because he's so much more than that. Content of character, content of who you are, helping you to elevate as a person, helping you to step into who you were created to be, right? So they just aren't out here just starting any kind of businesses, but they're starting businesses that are in alignment with who they were created to be. And it allows them to make 6, 7, 8, 9-figure and create 9-figure businesses out of those unique abilities and skills, right? So they build businesses. The fourth discipline is they are really good at strategic networking. 7-figure high performers understand 2 things. Number 1, no one is self-made, and environment is the most powerful influence in the world. They understand that their success is heavily dependent on who's in their circle. See, most people just build relationships by chance. Who they work with, who they grew up around, who just happens to be in their circle, who lived down the street from them. But 7-figure high performers, they build relationships by choice. They are intentional about who they spend time with because they understand that proximity is power, right? Here's the truth. Like, your environment sets your ceiling. If you surround yourself around people who are going nowhere, guess what? You ain't going nowhere. But if you surround yourself around people who are making an impact, who are making money, who are living with meaning and purpose, guess what happens? You'll do the exact same thing. So they choose their environments and the rooms they walk into wisely. I think it was Jim Rohn said that we are a sum average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Let that sink in. We are the sum average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And I like to believe that that doesn't mean just physical time. right? People that are in your physical environment. But that also means like people that are in your content, people that you watch on YouTube. That's considered your environment. Environment is anything that you're taking in through your eyes and your ears. So we are at some average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And the internet and social media has allowed us to be able to enter into rooms, into spaces that we otherwise didn't know existed or wouldn't even have access to, right? It allows us to elevate ourselves from our home, from our cars, right? So 7-figure high performers, they understand this. They live by this. They invest in masterminds. They join high-level coaching groups. They seek out mentors, not just for information, but to elevate themselves, right? Not information, but elevation. Most people network for comfort, right? 7-figure high performers, they network for growth. Because when you get in the right environment, elevation just becomes inevitable. Environment is the most powerful influence in the world. And this is how environment works. I always like to say, think about it like a frog, right? If you take a frog and throw that frog into boiling water, he's just going to jump out. But if you take that frog and throw him in some lukewarm water, he's going to sit in that water. And if you slowly turn the heat up on him, every time you turn the heat up, his body is going to adjust to that new temperature. And then eventually he's going to boil himself to death. That's what happens to us with our environments. Whether your environment is negative, whether your environment is positive. When you get in the right environments, you start to adapt yourself, your thoughts, your mind, your beliefs, your ideas, your behaviors to that environment unconsciously. You don't even realize it. So that is the power of getting in the right environment. So when you're in the right environment, elevation becomes inevitable. But when you're in the wrong environment, your destruction becomes inevitable. So you have to put yourself in the right environment, right? So that's number 4. Now, the 5th discipline is they invest in themselves. They know that the greatest return on their own growth is investing in themselves. Now, most people, they hesitate to invest in themselves. They hesitate to spend money on books, on courses, on coaching. They'll spend thousands of dollars on a vacation. They'll spend thousands of dollars on the newest iPhone, on shoes, on jewelry, on entertainment. Oh, they'll spend thousands of dollars on that. Oh, but when it comes to their self-development, elevating themselves, then they start to freeze up. 7-figure high performers, they flip that, right? They don't see it as an expense. They see it as an investment. See, average people wait until they have extra money, right? They'll wait until they have a little bit extra money. Then they want to go invest in their growth and buy the book. Then they want to go invest in a mentor or a coach, right? But high performers, they understand that their growth is the very reason that's going to create the extra money. It's not a luxury to them, but it is the engine that's going to take them where they want to go. And this is not something that I've witnessed and just seen. This is something I'm actively doing. I've already spent thousands of dollars for coaching, right? I make sure I read every day. I consume the wealth and knowledge of others. Because to be honest, like, you can lose money, you can lose opportunities, but when you invest in yourself, you'll have the skills, the wisdom, the confidence to rebuild everything that you lost. Everything is considered a learning opportunity. And something else I realized is that many people will be scared to invest in themselves because unconsciously money has become their master. Money has become their idol, and they subconsciously worship money. Like, for instance, if money stresses you out, if money dictates your mood, your attitude, there's a high chance that you're putting a higher value on money than what it really is, right? And 7-figure high performers understand that money is just a tool. Money is just a tool that's going to help them to get to where they want to go. So they'll take the $10,000, the $20,000, the $100,000 and invest in the coaching, invest in the consulting, because they understand that that investment is going to be able to be 10x'd, right, and allow them to get to the place that they want to go. I want you to think of investment like sharpening an axe, right? If you're sitting there trying to chop down a tree and you have a dull blade, it doesn't matter how hard you work. Eventually, you're going to wear yourself out and hardly get anywhere. But if you take the time to sharpen that blade, every swing, you're knocking out a good chunk of that tree. Every swing is propelling you forward faster, right? It's like iron sharpens iron. So when you invest in yourself and invest in courses, it's like you're sharpening yourself and you're able to go further faster. So that's number 5. Number 6, the 6th discipline is they master communication. See, they understand that wealth flows to clarity, right? And most people struggle to express their ideas. Most people think if the product is good enough, it'll speak for itself. But in reality, if you can't communicate your vision, your value, your offer, nobody's going to buy from you. Nobody's going to move. And all you're going to do is frustrate yourself and wonder why people aren't buying your thing. And the reality is, you may have a really good product. You may have something that can make you 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, take you to 100 million. But if you can't communicate the value that you offer, nobody's going to buy. You're going to stay broke. And all you're going to do is frustrate yourself. So high performers understand that mastering the art of communication is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. They learn how to influence, how to persuade, how to inspire, how to sell, how to transfer belief, right? Because they know that words create worlds. A single conversation can open a door, can close a deal, can change someone else's life, can talk someone off of a ledge, right? But the reality is, real impact doesn't come by just what you do, but it's more so what you say, because no one really will experience what you do unless you get really good at saying the right things, right? Now, you need both, but your words and your communication sets the stage for what they're going to expect. It's your words that's going to be able to shape what others believe, right? And it's that belief that's going to drive their action. And so it's just like when I talk about discipline. See, most people think they have a discipline problem. Really. Like most people think, man, I just can't be consistent. I struggle, man, with trying to stay in the gym. I struggle with eating right. I struggle with building this business and staying focused on the things that I need to focus on. But I realize that in reality, most people don't have a discipline problem. Most people have a dialogue problem. Their words. Because the conversation happens before the conduct. So before you conduct yourself in a certain manner, there is a certain conversation that is happening in your head. There is a negotiation trying to get you to either do the thing or not do the thing. And most people lose that negotiation with themselves, right? See, because words aren't just sounds, words are seeds. Every time you say something, you are either reinforcing what your current reality is or you're speaking a new reality into your life. Because the truth is, you can be the smartest, the hardest working, the most disciplined person in the room. But if you can't transfer belief into others, your impact is always going to be small. So 7-figure high performers, they treat their communication like a skill, not a talent, not something that they're just born and naturally good at. They treat it like a skill, something that needs to be developed. They study it, they practice it, they refine it over time because they understand that money and influence both follow the same thing, which is clarity. So they master their communication. And communication isn't about talking more. It's not about talking the loudest. It's not about being the smartest. Because truth is, anybody can say words. People can talk words all day. But it's about speaking in a way that's going to move people, that's going to influence people, that's going to transform someone's life, right? That's going to get someone to go from being stuck to being unstoppable. So they're constantly studying, constantly mastering their communication. So that's number 6. Number 7 is they train their body. They understand that the body is more than just an earth suit, more than just a meat suit and a skin suit, but it's a physical representation of their mind, of their lifestyle, of their habits, of their standards. It represents who they are as a person, right? It influences what other people think about them without them having to open their mouths or without them needing to say anything. Right? It sets the stage for who they are. See, most people treat their fitness and their body like it doesn't need to be trained. Like fitness is optional. They work out when they feel like it. They eat whenever it's convenient. And then they wonder why they're tired, why they're unfocused, why they're inconsistent. Look, you can't build a 7-figure high-performing life with a broken body. Discipline in the body spills over to discipline in business, in leadership, in your family, in your relationships, in your life. It's just like I said earlier, like discipline is not something that just touches one area of your life. If you're intentional about it, I'll say that. It is not something that just touches one area of your life, but it's something that can be transferred to other areas of your life. When you get in shape, right? You just don't get a nice physique. But the discipline that you learned can be applied to make you a better father, to make you a better husband, to make you a better wife, to make you a better mother, to make you a better brother, a better sister, right? It can be transferred to every other area of your life if you want it to and if you're intentional about it. This is why training isn't just about looking good. Looking good is a byproduct. Like everybody wants to look good. But the real benefit comes from showing up every single day, proving to yourself daily that you can do difficult things. It's about pushing your body and your mind when it wants to quit, because every time you do that, you are building evidence that not only can you do it in the gym, but you can do it outside the gym. So when your business gets tough, right? You've already built the evidence that you can handle difficult things. When you say that you're going to do 10 reps of something and then you complete that 10th one, you just built evidence to yourself that you do the things that you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to do 10 reps of something, but you only get to 8 and then you go back and knock out that 2, you just prove to yourself that you can do difficult things. And when things get tough and when you don't necessarily complete something in a certain day, you go back and you finish it. You just prove to yourself that you are a finisher. Think about it. Every great leader that you follow or admire has some type of physical regimen. The levels may change, right? They might not be bodybuilder status, but they're running, they're lifting, they're cycling, they're golfing. They're doing some type of training. They're doing something with their body. Meditation, yoga. They're doing something with their body to move their body, to make their body strong. They use their body as a tool to build discipline. And then that discipline allows them to build dollars and allows them to become a purpose-driven leader. Look, weak bodies can't carry a strong vision. Your energy is considered your wealth, right? So those are the 7 foundational disciplines of a 7-figure high performer. And those are the ones that have stood out most to me while studying them, while seeing them. Everybody that I know that is a 7-figure high performer has those 7 disciplines in their life. And these aren't just random habits and behaviors. These are foundations. These are things they just can't go without. Because if they don't have these things, they wouldn't have the results that they have. When you build on these foundations, you become the kind of person that wealth is attracted to, right? But anyway, hope you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you give this a thumbs up if you got value from this. And if you want more content like this on disciplined dollars and purpose-driven leadership, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And also, make sure you share this with somebody you feel might be able to get value from this episode. But that's all I have. I pray that your mind and your pockets never run dry, and I'll catch y'all in the next episode.